Greetings, Remnant Church and online friends. Welcome to the Midweek Refuel, where we seek out the ancient wisdom, simply because modern wisdom insists everything should be based on mutual agreement, which works wonderful, right up until someone is mildly inconvenienced. I have noticed that nearly all media put out over my recent memory makes me a little angry, not confused, not even surprised anymore, just irritated in a very steady, familiar way. And I started asking myself, why? Because it's not just that things are wrong, it's the entire posture. It's the constant tone of distance, of critique, of superiority, as if the highest form of intelligence is to stand back, fold your arms, and point out what's broken. I've watched people hate this country my entire life. They hate its history, they hate its traditions, its people, its failures, and interestingly enough, they hate it in a way that requires absolutely nothing from them. No sacrifice, no loyalty, no risk, just endless commentary. In fact, we live in a culture where the most asinine voices are very often the ones that have mastered critique without ever attempting construction. We have turned critique into a kind of virtue in our age. If you can tear something down quickly, confidently, preferably with a little sarcasm, then you're considered brilliant now. But if you try to build something, if you try to sustain something, if you try to love something long enough to repair it, well, now you're naive or biased, or part of the problem. History, of course, has already run this experiment. The French Revolution was absolutely brilliant at tearing things down. Less impressive at building anything that didn't eventually collapse into chaos and a strongman. Turns out you can dismantle a system very quickly. But if you don't love something enough to rebuild, you don't get freedom, you get a vacuum. And now we've industrialized the process. We've built entire platforms that reward the fastest, sharpest, and most dismissive critique. You don't have to be right. You just have to sound like you are, in under 10 seconds, of course. And this isn't new. There have always been thinkers who specialized in tearing things down, and very few who could actually put something back together again. It's much easier to stand above a thing than to kneel inside of it. Something that has always baffled me, and if I'm honest, irritated me, is the posture of people who are convinced that they are victims. Because when they look out and see others prospering from discipline, from hard labor, from sacrifice, they don't see all that. They don't see someone reaping what they have sown. They see injustice. They don't see the long hours, the risks, the quiet decisions no one applauded. They see the outcome, and they resent it, because it isn't theirs. And what's more concerning is that this posture has not only spread, it has become institutionalized. We now have entire systems that reward people for identifying as wronged, as if grievance itself were a kind of currency. And once that becomes the system, building becomes optional. But tearing down becomes profitable. Because why endure the slow, costly work of construction when critique is faster, easier, and quite often more rewarded? The problem, of course, is that this posture cannot produce anything, or at least anything that lasts. It doesn't create. It doesn't restore. It doesn't transform. It divides, and then slowly consumes what it divides. Because tearing something down requires almost nothing from you. It doesn't require your understanding, it doesn't require your patience, and it certainly doesn't require your responsibility. In fact, you can be almost completely uninformed and still sound very confident as long as you've learned the tone. You know the tone. You hear it on the evening news and on The View. You don't have to know how something was built. Why concern yourself? You don't have to understand what it cost people to build it. You don't even have to ask why it even exists. You just have to assume it shouldn't. And once that assumption is in place, it becomes very easy to guide people. Because if you can convince someone that everything around them is unjust, You don't have to teach them how to build. You only have to give them something to tear down. Attention seekers and power structures thrive on this cycle because it keeps people focused on what's broken rather than what could be fixed. It keeps them angry enough to follow, but never empowered enough to lead. And so the system perpetuates itself. More division, more resentment, more empty promises of justice, while the actual work of building remains undone. But here's the irony, no one is truly powerless in this equation. The real tragedy isn't that some people feel like victims, it's that they've been convinced to embrace their powerlessness as an identity. To build requires not just effort, it requires ownership, a willingness to take responsibility for your life, for your choices, for your future. But when you're rewarded for being a victim, why bother? This posture of perpetual grievance doesn't just divide us, it also isolates us. It keeps us from seeing the ways in which our lives are interconnected, from understanding that someone else's success isn't a threat to ours, but an opportunity to learn from them, to grow, and to collaborate. And when we lose sight of that, we lose something essential to who we were meant to be: builders, creators, restorers. Because in the end, the world doesn't need more critics. It's got enough. We're all stocked up here. It needs more people willing to get their hands dirty, to take risk, and to love something enough to build it. Even when it's hard. Even when nobody's applauding you. So let's ask ourselves, what are we building? And what are we tearing down in the process? The answer will tell us everything about who we are and who we're becoming. The devil himself has made you feel accomplished and righteous simply by chaining you to your victimhood. It's been amazing. And here's the most insidious part. He's even convinced you that destroying everything around you is a sign of your intelligence, of being wise and enlightened. After all, what could be more impressive than tearing down traditions, tearing down institutions, tearing down relationships, tearing down even your own life? What could be more proof of your superiority than standing back and declaring, this isn't worth saving? Here's the truth. Deconstruction is easy. It doesn't take wisdom to tear down or to tear something apart. It takes only arrogance. What takes wisdom, true, divine, life-giving wisdom, is knowing what to build, how to restore, and why it matters. Satan has fooled you. He has fooled you into believing that being a critic makes you clever, that pointing out flaws makes you insightful, and that rejecting everything makes you free and well-rounded. But in reality, all you've done is clear the land without planting anything in its place. And when the dust settles, what's left? Nothing but barren ground and the echoing sound of your own resentment. This is the greatest trick, convincing you to destroy not only what's broken, but also what's good, what's beautiful, and what's worth preserving. He doesn't even have to force you. He just whispers in your ear, it's not perfect, it's unfair, it's outdated. And with that, you take the wrecking ball to the very things that could have been redeemed, restored, and renewed, if only you had loved them enough to do the hard work of rebuilding. But Satan doesn't care about fairness or justice. He cares about emptiness. He knows that as long as you're focused on tearing things down, on deconstructing, he can keep you from ever building up. And if you never build anything, you'll never have anything. Nothing to lose. You won't have anything to cherish, and you won't have anything to pass on to the next generation. So he keeps you trapped in this endless cycle. 1, identify a problem. 2, declare it irredeemable. 3, tear it down with glee. 4, feel wise and liberated for the destruction. 5, rinse, wash, repeat with the new thing of the day. And with each iteration, you become more isolated, more bitter, and more enslaved to your own resentment. You're not freeing yourself. You're chaining yourself to a life of destruction, all while believing you're breaking free. But true freedom, the kind that comes from God and God alone, isn't found in tearing down, it's found in building up. It's found in the hard, slow, unglamorous work of restoration. It's found in loving something enough to fix it, to heal it, and to make it better than it was before. So ask yourself, what am I building? And what am I destroying? Because in the end, the only way to truly overcome Satan's lies is to stop being his demolition crew and start being God's construction team. Now, turn, if you will, to our section in Orthodoxy. And while you're there, do me a favor, go ahead and hit the like and the subscribe button so that this doesn't get buried under 10,000 videos explaining why nothing is worth saving. The 18th century theories of the social contract has been exposed to much clumsy criticism in our time, insofar as they meant that there is, at the back of all historic government, an idea of content and cooperation. They were demonstrably right, but they really were wrong insofar as they suggested that men had ever aimed at order or ethics directly by a conscious exchange of interest. Morality did not begin by one man saying to another, "I will not hit you if you do not hit me." There is no trace of such a transaction. There is a trace of both men having said, "We must not hit each other in the holy place." They gained their morality by guarding their religion. They did not cultivate courage, they fought for the shrine and found they had become courageous. They did not cultivate cleanliness, they purified themselves for the altar and found that they were clean. The history of the Jews is the only early document known to most Englishmen, and the facts can be judged sufficiently from that. The 10 Commandments, which have been found substantially common to mankind, were merely military commands, a code of regimental orders issued to protect a certain ark across a certain desert. Anarchy was evil because it endangered the sanctity. And only when they made a holy day for God did they find they had made a holiday for men. If it be granted that this primary devotion to a place or thing is a source of creative energy, we can pass on to a very peculiar fact. Let us reiterate for an instant that the only right optimism is a sort of universal patriotism. What is the matter with the pessimist? I think it can be stated by saying that he is the cosmic anti-patriot. And what is the matter with the anti-patriot? I think it can be stated without undue bitterness by saying that he is the candid friend. And what is the matter with the candid friend? There we strike the rock of real life and immutable human nature. I venture to say that what is bad in the candid friend is simply that he is not candid. He is keeping something back, his own gloomy pleasure in saying unpleasant things. He has a secret desire to hurt, not merely to help. This is certainly, I think, what makes a certain sort of anti-patriot irritating to healthy citizens. I do not speak, of course, of the anti-patriotism which only irritates feverish stockbrokers and gushing actresses. That is only patriotism speaking plainly. A man who says that no patriot should attack the Boer Wall until it is over is not worth answering intelligently. He is saying that no good son should warn his mother off a cliff until she has fallen over it. But there is an anti-patriot who honestly angers honest men, and the explanation of him is, I think, what I have suggested. He is the uncandid, candid friend. The man who says, "I am sorry to say we are ruined," and is not sorry at all. And he may be said, without rhetoric, to be a traitor, for he is using that ugly knowledge which was allowed him to strengthen the army, to discourage people from joining it. Because he is allowed to be pessimistic as a military advisor, he is being pessimistic as a recruiting sergeant. Just in the same way, the pessimist, who is the cosmic anti-patriot, uses the freedom that life allows to her counselors to lure away the people from her flag. Granted that he states only facts, it is still essential to know what are his emotions, what is his motive. It may be that 1,200 men in Tottenham are down with smallpox. But we want to know whether this is stated by some great philosopher who wants to curse the gods, or by some common clergyman who wants to help the men. The evil of the pessimist is then not that he chastises gods and men, but that he does not love what he chastises. He has not this primary and supernatural loyalty to things. What is the evil of the man commonly called an optimist? Obviously, it is felt that the optimist, wishing to defend the honor of this world, will defend the indefensible. He is the jingo of the universe. He will say, my cosmos, right or wrong. He will be less inclined to reform of things, more inclined to a sort of front bench official answer to all attacks, soothing everyone with assurances. He will not wash the world, but whitewash the world. All this, which is true of a type of optimist, leads us to the one really interesting point of psychology which could not be explained without it. We say there must be a primal loyalty to life. The only question is, shall it be a natural or a supernatural loyalty? If you like to put it so, shall it be a reasonable or an unreasonable loyalty? Now, the extraordinary thing is that the bad optimism, the whitewashing, the weak defense of everything, comes in with the reasonable optimism. Rational optimism leads to stagnation. It is irrational optimism that leads to reform. Let me explain by using once more the parallel of patriotism. The man who is most likely to ruin the place he loves is exactly the man who loves it with a reason. The man who will improve the place is the man who loves it without a reason. If a man loves some feature of Pimlico, which seems unlikely, he may find himself defending the feature against Pimlico itself. But if he simply loves Pimlico itself, he may lay it waste and turn it into the New Jerusalem. I do not deny that reform may be excessive. I only say that it is the mystic patriot who reforms. Mere jingo self-contentment is commonest among those who have some pedantic reason for their patriotism. The worst jingos do not love England, but a theory of England. If we love England for being an empire, we may overrate the success with which we rule the Hindus. But if we love it only for being a nation, we can face all events, for it would be a nation even if the Hindus ruled us. Thus, also, only those will permit their patriotism to falsify history whose patriotism depends on history. A man who loves England for being English will not mind how she arose, but a man who loves England for being Anglo-Saxon may go against all facts for his fancy. He may end, like Carlyle and Freeman, by maintaining that the Norman conquest was a Saxon conquest. He may end in utter unreason because he has a reason. A man who loves France for being military will palliate the army of 1870, but a man who loves France for being France will improve the army of 1870. This is exactly what the French have done, and France is a good instance of the working paradox. Nowhere else is patriotism more purely abstract and arbitrary, and nowhere else is reform more drastic and sweeping. The more transcendental is your patriotism, the more practical are your politics. Perhaps the most everyday instance of this point is in the case of women and their strange and strong loyalty. Some stupid people started the idea that because women obviously back up their own people through everything, therefore women are blind and do not see anything. They can hardly have known any women. The same women who are ready to defend their men through thick and thin are, in their personal intercourse with the man, almost morbidly lucid about the thinness of his excuses and the thickness of his head. A man's friend likes him but leaves him as he is. His wife loves him and is always trying to turn him into somebody else. Women who are utter mystics in their creed are utter cynics in their criticism. Thackeray expressed this well when he made Pendennis's mother, who worshipped her son as a god, yet assumed that he would go wrong as a man. She underrated his virtue, though she overrated his value. The devotee is entirely free to criticize. The fanatic can safely be a skeptic. Love is not blind. That is the last thing that it is. Love is bound, and the more it is bound, the less it is blind. And Chesterton leaves us with this, a line that, if you understand it, completely dismantles the modern mindset. He says, love is not blind. That is the last thing that it is. Love is bound, and the more it is bound, the less it is blind. In other words, the people who actually see clearly are not the ones standing at a distance with their arms crossed. They are the ones who have bound themselves to something worth preserving. But hear me carefully, because this matters. Binding yourself in love does not mean enabling what destroys. It does not mean remaining in chaos. It does not mean giving access to what is breaking everything around it. Love builds. Love builds what is good. It protects what is worth keeping, and love refuses to participate in what destroys. The modern critic thinks distance gives him clarity. Chesterton says the exact opposite. Distance gives you illusion. But love gives you sight. And the tragedy of our time is not that things are broken. It's that we have been trained to believe nothing is worth fixing. But that is not the voice of truth. That is the voice that keeps you passive, distant, and ultimately useless. Because as long as you stay at a distance, you never have to carry anything. You never have to build anything. You never have to become anything. But you were not made for that. You were made to take hold of something, to bind yourself to what is the good, and to build it patiently, faithfully, even when no one is watching. So ask yourself, honestly ask yourself, what have I been content to criticize that I am actually being called to build? What have I kept at a distance because I didn't want the responsibility of loving it? Because in the end, you will not be known for what you stood apart from. You will be known for what you bound yourself to and what you loved enough to build. As for me, I'm done standing at a distance. I'm done pretending critique is clarity. I'm binding myself to what is true, what is good, and what is worth preserving. And I'm building, not my own kingdom, His. Christ is King. Hail to the King.